Hello, and welcome to the 12 Days of Tradmus. If you're new around here, my name is Kit, and Tradmus is a series I do in December, where I talk about the harmful beliefs and ideas promoted by certain influencers, content creators, and so on. Basically, my normal content, but more of it and with a festive flair. And on the 10th day of Tradmus, we're discussing Bernadine Bluntly. Before we get into it, I would like to note that I don't know Bernadine, and these are my thoughts and opinions on the content she puts out for public consumption. That being said, thank you for clicking on this video, and I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons. A few months ago, Real Alex Clark posted a video titled Biblical Patriarchy with Bernadine Bluntly. Bernadine is one of the OG trad wives, and Alex Clark is... well, she hosts The Spillover by Turning Point USA, and per her Twitter bio, she's the founder of the Cute-Servative movement. Okay, the video is over an hour long, so we're just going to get right into it. Alex begins the episode by telling us that there's a virus that's infected the right, and this time, it's not feminism. When did feminism infect the right? Anyway, the virus is red pill, and I did not expect that. Given that Bernadine has made no secret about how much she dislikes the manosphere, I think they're setting up for red pill says, but God says, and we're skipping over Alex's rant about the trad wife LARPers who are rage baiting men to get to Alex's first question.
All of that is said to pose this question. Is a patriarchy ever good? If it is there a difference between a biblical one and a worldly one? How should conservative women respond to the disenfranchised red pill men? And how can you spate a fake trad wife from a real one?
And she is apparently going to discuss all of that with Bernadine, whom she introduces as having been married for 11 years and having 5 kids, 2 of which she free-birthed. Alex notes that Bernadine describes herself as pro-family and anti-degeneracy and asks what that means.
It means anything that would harm the family unit, anything that would hurt a marriage. I'm against that. So feminism, sexual degeneracy, really anything that would get in the way of a healthy, thriving marriage, yeah.
Unsurprising, but it's always nice when people specify. And then Alex asks if God wants us to live in a patriarchy, which made me laugh, and also unsurprisingly, Bernadine believes so because if you look at scriptures, it's plainly laid out that God made man first, and from man he made woman. And then he describes it, I assume she means marriage, as the husband being head of the family. They go into what being the head of a family can mean, and Alex notes that can sound controlling and sinister to a lot of women. Bernadine says she understands that view, but...
women haven't grown up in a proper family unit or with a proper understanding of a healthy family and healthy patriarchy. And so I specifically say I'm for biblical patriarchy.
Hot take. You can't grow up in a healthy patriarchy because there is no such thing. And biblical or worldly, patriarchy is still saying that men need to be the leaders, the decision makers, because they are men. Whether it's because you think God ordained it or because you think men are biologically more rational, it's foolish and dangerous to place that power in the hands of someone because of their sex, which Bernadine kind of acknowledges.
If a father is ruling, but he's not submitting himself to God, not submitting himself to the way he should be acting, then he could use that and abuse it. Absolutely, 100%. I don't deny that at all.
Great. She doesn't deny it, but she also tries to dismiss it in the strangest way.
But God, because he is a father, he is the ultimate father and he is good. When he says patriarchy, when he says father ruled, it's coming from a heart that loves, that cares, that protects, provides, and leads well out of love. It's not to control and to hurt and harm and neglect. Absolutely not. And so I specifically support biblical patriarchy.
So men can abuse patriarchy, but God is good. And Bernadine supports biblical patriarchy because in the Bible, it tells men how to treat their wives and children, and there's no room for abuse. And no matter how they actually treat their wives and children, men in this biblical patriarchy Bernadine talks about can still act however they want, and their wives and kids can't stop them, and they wouldn't think to if they buy into this belief. The rationale behind patriarchy is paper thin as is, but this biblical patriarchy is better than just patriarchy. Is anyone convinced by this? Anyway, Bernadine waxes poetic.
It's actually really beautiful when you study it and when you see it and when you live it out in real life, it's very safe, and it's very, it gives you a frame and a structure to thrive in and to feel whole and safe, not just for wives, but for their children as well.
I'm glad to hear that from Bernadine, given what we saw of her husband Lawson's post last week, but I'm still not buying it. If that's how you want to live, that's your business, but she is either dreaming or in denial if she thinks that's how it would be for everyone. Anyway, Alex says that was beautiful and goes into an ad, and then into Bernadine and Lawson's dating story, and then into Bernadine and Lawson's first exposure to Red Pill, and I'm sorry, but what?
I think the first thing that exposed us to all of it, I think most people were exposed to the Red Pill manosphere through the Tates. I think they have a lot of good things that they say and do. I think if you're looking for mentorship with business, with, social media and all of that, they're fantastic with that, right?
What good things have the Tate brothers said and done? How does she figure they're fantastic regarding business and social media? Just because someone says the occasional good thing or true thing doesn't mean they get a pass as not that bad, which is clearly what Bernadine is going for here, as she gives that, but they're not all bad and skilled in some areas preface before adding that men should stay far away from the brothers' advice regarding sex and relationships. Is she afraid there might be some Tate fans in Alex's audience, so she has to tread carefully? Or does she agree with them on everything except sex and relationships? It's hard to tell, but I'm not impressed. Alex goes on to ask Bernadine how she would describe Red Pill, and I'm still not impressed.
This is just sexual degeneracy. It's feminism for men. Basically,
yes,
that's what
it's feminism for men, and conservative guys are falling for it.
Right.
Again, Red Pill is not feminism for men. They are latching onto one thing that neither Red Pillers nor feminists believe you need to be married to have sex, and running with it to, yep, same thing. I'll link my video on that topic in the cards, reiterate that no matter how often they try to equate the two, they still aren't anywhere near the same, even if we were in the upside down. And now we move on to what Bernadine thinks feminism is.
For years, I've spoken out against feminism because it's that whole idea that I'm not responsible for anything. I'm not at fault. There's nothing I can change. It's all men's fault, and all men are wrong, and all men are dirtbags.
That's not what feminism is, and I'm confused. Per Bernadine, when she was younger, she was brainwashed into feminist thinking and thought she had to change the world, and she nearly left Lawson over it. So if she thinks feminism is man bad, why did she marry a man? If she thinks feminism is women have no responsibility, why did she think it was her responsibility to change the world? Is it possible that Bernadine was lying about her origin story to make her anti-feminism seem more genuine? What a puzzle. Anyway, if that's Bernadine's idea of feminism, I can see how she equates it to Red Pill, but an anti-feminist saying that feminism is something doesn't make it so.
If feminists are saying all men are crap, and the Red Pill manosphere are saying all women are crap, everybody's basically just saying marriage is crap.
To boil feminism down to men are crap is so dishonest, and I'm pretty sure Bernadine knows that. I'm also pretty sure that Bernadine knows feminists date, marry, have kids, generally interact with men like, people, whereas Red Pill actively dehumanizes women. Women are not people. They are objects to be manipulated so you get what you want from them. Is Bernadine sure she wants to compare feminism to this? Lying is a sin, last I knew. Anyway, Alex asked Bernadine how to tell the difference between a real trad wife and a LARPer, and Bernadine says it's not what it looks like to the outside, but their heart and why they do what they do. It's all for the benefit of the family, unlike feminists who say to get your bag, climb that corporate ladder, be a boss babe at the cost of the family's health. It apparently hasn't occurred to Bernadine that just because she sees a woman climbing a corporate ladder, it doesn't mean her family is suffering. Such considerations should be reserved for trad wives only. Anyway, Alex goes off about the fake trad wives who think women should never work, and I'm starting to wonder if this is personal. She does ask why they're flexing on Twitter about their husbands never changing a diaper, and I honestly don't know. Bernadine says it's an extreme caricature of a trad wife, and maybe, but it is really weird. Anyway, they finally move on to some general advice Bernadine would give, and, this is a bit off the rails. Alex asks what you can get from marriage that you can't from a relationship, and somehow we end up here.
My husband and I, when we got married, we were both virgins.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're a virgin, your hymen is intact, and when you have sex for the first time, the hymen is broken. and that blood is spilled. When you get married and you have sex for the first time, that blood is spilled, and you created a covenant, a blood covenant. There's no greater kind of covenant you can make than a blood covenant.
I'm so confused by adults who think their experience will be everyone's experience. You can be a virgin and not have an intact hymen. You can have an intact hymen and not bleed from your first time. She gets this from people sacrificing animals in the Old Testament and the blood of Jesus in the New, but I don't think it's a good idea to tell people that marriage will have a deeper meaning, a deeper bond, if there's blood. Anyway, Bernadine says we're lost because we no longer know what marriage is or how to function as a husband or wife, and
because if we go back and look at like the 1950s, before the sexual revolution, before feminism just like came in and destroyed so many different things, men and women, even when they weren't like engaged, they didn't go have a ceremony. When a man has sex with a woman, and you can look the statistics up on this, they usually ended up marrying each other. So the first person they had sex with, they married them. And that was the norm back then. You've heard of shotgun weddings, where if the dad finds out you've had sex with, if a dad finds out that a man has had sex with his daughter, he's like, you better marry her.
Yeah.
You went that far, you better take care of her. If she's pregnant, you better take care of her and them. Well, that was also normal back then because people understood the gravity of sex. It wasn't casual. It's never, ever casual. It's heavy. It has a high risk and a lot of consequences that can come with it.
Fun fact, I am the product of a shotgun wedding. And knowing what I know, I can't mourn them as a norm. Marrying because you had sex is a terrible idea, and there is a reason the divorce rate shot up once it became easier to do so, and why it leveled off and began lowering as marrying later and not marrying at all became less stigmatized. Bernadine thinks the idea of questioning marriage and what it means is a sign that society is lost, but I think it's a sign of a healthy society. Doing something because it's just always been done is a bad idea and, in my opinion, lacks thought. Alex asks how you can create that convent if you're not a virgin, and Bernadine says it's very difficult, but when you marry, you create a covenant under Jesus. And yeah, I highly doubt Bernadine would be in favor of divorce just because there was no blood spilled on the wedding night. Anyway.
I have a lot of testimonials on my Instagram where a lot of women were feminists, they were atheists. It's called the Rip Feminism series. And you can see the change in their photos alone. If I didn't share the words that they sent me.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a physical change when women leave that lifestyle.
Yeah, you can see in their eyes, it was just darkness and no life behind their eyes. And then afterwards, they're just lit up and just full of life.
You heard it here, folks. Being a feminist, being an atheist, I wouldn't be surprised if she thinks those two things go together, makes you dead inside. Anyway, Bernadine tells us the difference between born-again trad wives and Red Pill is that, although Red Pill likes to co-opt Christianity, they don't understand the gospel and they don't have the fruit of the gospel. Alex jumps in to say they don't believe women can be redeemed. Bernadine agrees, and so do I. Though, honestly, I don't think Red Pillars who try to use the Bible against women actually believe in it. They just use it because they think it backs them up. Anyway, from here we move on to more questions, and, well, Alex asks what Bernadine thinks about women trending more left, and Bernadine says it's not a surprise, and she thinks women are emotionally exploited by political messages to get them to vote in certain ways. Because we all know men are immune to emotional appeals, and conservatives certainly never try to exploit people. But this is what caught my attention.
If you don't have a strong faith, if you don't have a strong father figure or a strong husband who actually leads, you can fall for these traps, because they use our empathy to be like, oh, look at all these people, look at all these problems, look at all these people are getting hurt. If you don't have children to be like, actually, that policy would hurt my children, so I'm going to put my children over, animals or, immigrants. I don't know how to say that.
There's the old Bernadine, likening immigrants with animals. But let's be honest, she doesn't care if policies hurt other children. She just didn't want to say that because it would sound bad. And Bernadine informs us that if you don't prioritize your own family, you'll fall for the propaganda. Because that individualist society where you make sure you get yours and everyone else can go to hell is very biblical and working out so well.
Young women, they are leaning more liberal because, everything from abortion to LGBT, it's using their empathy to be like, what about the woman who, really needs an abortion?
Right.
What about her life? What about the the couple who's a homosexual couple who's not getting equal treatment and they're being bullied. Like, these are pain points that young girls are like, oh, that's so true. I want to help them. I want to, meet their immediate needs, but they're not looking at the long-term effects of how these things could hurt society and families.
Young girls are not voting, and abortion being legal, being gay not being criminalized is not a negative for society. For anyone wondering, Alex agrees with Bernadine, but doesn't want to take the podcast there as it would be off topic. However,
everything you're saying really brings up this argument of, has it been a net negative or has it been a net positive allowing women to vote? Yeah. That is a huge can of worms. And that is it's a very fascinating deep dive and thought exercise.
Thinking about women not being able to vote is a fascinating thought exercise. Who are these women?
I don't think I would have a problem with it, though. I don't think I would have a problem if women did not vote and it was just, your husband cast the vote on behalf of your family or something like that. I don't think I would have a problem with it.
If you don't want to vote, don't vote. You won't be fined or imprisoned for not doing so. Alex doesn't seem to like Red Pill. Is she aware that women not voting is one of their things? Anyway, we return to questions. Bernadine says men aren't given permission to be masculine by a lot of churches right now, and I'm just over here like, what?
We need to talk about the hard things, and we need to let men be men. We need to let men be men. Like, stop feminizing or making the church effeminate. It's okay if you're not crying during worship. It's okay if you don't look like the women in church. You can be a man in church, and we're going to help you do that. We're going to help you make the money, work out, be healthy, have a strong sex life in your marriage. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to be willing to talk about these topics that are like, oh, can you talk about sex in church? You know what I mean? Like, let's get over it and just talk about sex. God made sex, and it's a good thing. And if anybody's going to talk about sex, it should be Christians, because we know the God who created and designed sex.
This is so weird. Per all these folks, men are the leaders of the home because they're strong and decisive, they protect and provide, but they also need permission to be masculine. They're easily manipulated into looking like women, whatever that means. And they're also shaming these men if they find something emotional in a church service and cry. I'm getting conflicting messages here. And now, wait a minute. Alex asked how culture would shift if more women saw their family as their greatest ministry. Bernadine says they would have a lot of peace, and then...
I have always been driven to make a change in the world. I've always wanted to, share the truth and tell people what can help them and change their lives, like I'm doing today. But I felt like it had to be one or the other, So when I was a newlywed and I had children and I was changing those diapers and washing those dishes, lest my husband be gay, I was deep in the trenches of motherhood, and I felt like, wow, I'm not telling people about Jesus. I'm not doing missions. I'm not, going out there and changing the world. I'm just changing diapers.
I'm not going to say I told you so, but I did call it when Bernadine tried to claim that feminist brainwashing had convinced her she needed to change the world, and she nearly left her husband over it. And I suggested that perhaps it wasn't feminism, it was just who Bernadine is. As mentioned earlier in the video, Bernadine engaged in worldly feminist thinking that made her believe she must change the world. Is she quite sure she's no longer in that feminist mindset? Though her views may be different, she's still pushing them on social media in an effort to drive change. She's also created an online dating course and an online store, which sells items with catchy slogans on it like faith over fear, feminine and free, and feminine no longer feminist. She also created TradX Connect, where members of the trad community can connect with like-minded people. So again, is she quite certain that believing she must change the world was the feminist mindset and not simply who she is? I feel so vindicated. Anyway, Bernadine wants to bring back stay-at-home daughters, and both of these two are conservatives who seem to forget that conservatives love capitalism.
Hey, guess what? All this career first stuff that the feminists convinced us to do, it kind of has sucked.
Yeah, it's kind of not as fulfilling as y'all made it out to be.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the idea wasn't that paid employment would be fulfilling, but that the ability to make your own money is important. Anyway, Alex asks if there are marriageable and non-marriageable college majors. Bernadine thinks there are, and
because of women's biology, there are some things that are just innately stressful to us, and some people, there are women that don't fall in that category. Maybe they're really good at science. Maybe they're really good at math. that's great. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But most women, their biology, they need, if you look at their cycle, they need times to rest. They need times to recalibrate and refill their cup. And then there are other times where they're more social and they're go-getting, but we're not like men. We don't have that, that 24-hour cycle. And so
did she just say that math and science can be stressful for women because of our biology? Things that you don't understand or have no interest in can be stressful if you're forced to do them, regardless of your sex. But I don't think someone who's not into math or science would be freely choosing that as their college major. These folks are so keen on stressing differences between men and women that they say the strangest things. Case in point.
The corporate, the industrial revolution stuff, that's not really healthy for women.
It's not healthy for anyone, including the planet. Anyway.
If we push women to take the same careers as men and to work the same, kinds of fields as men do, where the men excel at these things, but women are like, please do this career. STEM is like trying to force women, trying to get more women to sign up for that. But there's naturally less women in STEM.
Yeah.
Because men are better at that. Their brains are created to be better at science and math and spatial skills and things like that.
Bernadine tries to style herself as a deep thinker, but she just looks at things and accepts them as they are. She doesn't ask herself why something is the way it is. She sees more men in tech and assumes that's because men have a natural talent and interest in it, even though women played a large role in the development of computers and the internet. In fact, coding used to be a woman's job. Of course, she does make a living from enforcing traditional gender roles, so it's not surprising, but it is disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, Alex asked Bernadine if she thinks men are smarter than women.
In things that men are good at, yeah. I mean, men and women are different. They are equal in value, but they're different in design.
It's like they have a playbook, and I'm baffled by how they can say that men are good at some things and women are good at others. Actually, it reminds me of that red pillar who came into my live stream last year who wanted me to name 3 things men are good at and got upset when I couldn't. But I know and have known a lot of men, and none of them were good at the same things. For that matter, none of them were interested in the same things. Because men are not a monolith, just as women are not a monolith, and it's a mistake to try and put gendered expectations and assumptions on them. Anyway, Alex asked what the difference is between traditional women and modern women, and I'm very interested in this answer because I've heard a lot about how awful modern women are. But I'm still not clear on what exactly makes a woman modern.
I want to talk about biblical traditional women because a traditional woman has a lot of things going for them, but specifically you're stronger at being family oriented and things like that if you have Christ in your life. So you serve God, you have faith, you prioritize your family. So even if you're single, you prioritize your parents and your siblings and your friends, you're relationship focused. Whereas a modern woman is unfortunately just someone who's been raised by the media.
Very selfish, very me first, what makes me feel good. Yeah. That's what I would think.
Yeah, and they're misguided. So they don't have any boundaries. They sleep around, they do OnlyFans, they have zero domestic skills. That's bad even just for them. You know what I mean? They think that their worth and their value and their identity depends on what they do in the world, not their relationships at home, not their faith in Christ. And that's a very dangerous thing to rely on because the world is constantly changing.
So then, per Bernadine, I'm not modern or traditional. Relationships are important to me. I have slept around, but I still have boundaries. Just because Bernadine wouldn't agree with them doesn't mean they don't exist. I've never been on OnlyFans. I have domestic skills, and I don't place my worth in the world, though I'm not a Christian. I hear a lot of assumptions in this, but in reality, people are more complex than folks like Bernadine and Alex allow. Anyway, they returned to questions, and I found this odd.
How many women in the modern scene are even thinking about pregnancy and motherhood? They're not. You know what I mean? They just want to hook up and they just want to date around and find the hottest guy.
Before we started recording, I was asking her, how long did you leave your kids' umbilical cord on? I don't think most modern women would ask questions like that.
I don't think they realize it, but they're doing the same thing as Red Pill. They're trashing the mythical modern woman just like Red Pillers do, but they think it's different somehow. And they prove my point by talking about how Red Pillers think Alex is a feminist because she's not married yet, but she's doing all these things like volunteering with kids and learning about birth to prepare for being a wife and mother. And doing these things to prepare yourself for marriage does not make you better than someone who's not doing those things.
When you are marriage minded, you're already looking at yourself in the future. Like, what's that going to look like? Even if you're doing things like this with a podcast, you know that you're going to be home with your family. You're going to want to cook for them. You want to educate your kids, so you're learning about homeschool, you're learning about health and all of that. That's fantastic. Like, those are the skills and the knowledge that you're going to need in that season. And so, no, I don't think you're feminist at all.
Thank you. If Bernadine says I'm not feminist, then I will take it.
Apparently, feminism is when women aren't marriage-minded. Anyway, they end the podcast talking about Bernadine's dating course, and Alex encourages boyfriends and husbands to follow Lawson. Alex and Bernadine would likely be horrified to realize how much they have in common with Red Pill. They both disdain feminism, they both disdain women who aren't living a traditional lifestyle, they both think women have a specific role to play, they both champion conservative policies and beliefs. The only difference I can think of is that Alex and Bernadine allow for people to be born again, and Red Pillers don't seem to be that generous. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.